Hello once again, fellow listeners. Welcome once again to this channel, Joe Mwai's channel, a channel that is set to give you insights and also to cause your mind to do what we call critical thinking, to focus upon reality in order for you to ask yourself whether you are satisfied with the information that has been fed to you relating to reality, whether what we see, whether what you see when you wake up, what I see when I stand at this seaside, whether this is the only reality that there is. When I walk in the nighttime, I come out of the house in the nighttime and I see the expansive skies and the band of the Milky Way and the stars that fills the sky. Then I ask myself whether this is the only reality that there is. As you saw in my last video, I pointed out that intelligence is the only reality there is. This intelligence is the intelligence that you and I have. It is the intelligence that enables you to process thought. And in order for you to understand that, you've heard it said and you know that reality is simply the product or a product of our imagination. And I'll give you an example. Before I came here, the idea of coming here was simply an idea. It was a thought. I thought, hey, I want to come out of the house. I want to go to the seaside and do some recording. And as a result of that, I immediately developed a vision in my mind where I want to go. And I saw the route that I would take, and I changed and I dressed, and I came out of my house, and I walked towards the direction of my vision. And I walked, I did not go to the opposite direction. And I walked until I got here. And now this reality that was a while ago an idea is in my mind has become a reality. And this is how it is with life. Everything that we do starts with an idea. It starts with a thought. All the technological advancement that surrounds us today, all the things that you do when you wake up, when you walk, when you sit down to have your breakfast, it is an idea. It was an idea before you did that. Even having a bath, even washing, even brushing your teeth, even the clothes that you will wear, even going to work, even doing the things that you're doing at work, it originates with an idea. And that is how we are able to do the things that we do, through the ability to process our thoughts. Something that differentiates us from our closest primate, as we saw in the last video, where I showed you of the difference between the brain of man and that of the closest primate, which is the chimpanzee. The 2% difference, which constitutes of our ability to process thought, our memory bank. So this is intelligence, and this is how reality is the product of our imagination. This is how everything originates from a thought. And this is how we manage to connect with what surrounds us. But the mind itself is not connected with the external aspect of our being, or what Paul calls the members of the body. And I believe that Paul was one of the greatest metaphysicians of today, on the basis that he says that he realized in Romans chapter 7, he wanted to do good. But he realized, and this is after he was taken into the wilderness for 3 years and given the doctrine that Jesus had brought, something that we will talk about. And when he came back, he wanted to do good. But he says, the things I want to do, I do not do. And those things I do not want to do, I find myself doing. And he continued to say, what a wretched man I am. Who will save me from this body, the members of the body of death? But he continued to say that he realized that there are two forms of law. There is a law that is the law of mind, and the law of mind is also the law of the Spirit, which is also the law of God. And yet there is another law that serves the members of the body. And he continued to tell us that the law that serves the members of the body wages war against the law of the Spirit, against the law of the mind, against the law of God. And what does that tell you, fellow listener? It tells you that the law that serves the members of the body is not of the same penfold, or does not originate from the same lawgiver as the one responsible for the law of the mind, which is what we call God. It also tells us, it makes us to question a lot on the origin of these members of the common sense. Are they, or do they originate from the same maker who has given you mind, who has given you your spiritual law? Again, there's a contradiction, because if there were, then as Jesus pointed out, it would be a house divided against itself, because it would imply that the maker made two laws that are at loggerheads with each other. A law that serves the members of the body that wages war against the law of the Spirit. And from a metaphysical perspective, it implies that these members of the body, which Paul calls the body of death, is not a constitution of what was made by your maker, by my maker. If you understand your maker as the originator, as the source of all intelligence, which implies or which means that your maker is the infinite universal, or responsible for the infinite universal of intelligence that originates from what is called the absolute being, which is now God. And when we understand that, then we can move to the next point. And the next point is that your mind is who you really are. You're not what you see when you stand in front of the mirror, but you are the thinker behind what you see. You are the inner man, as a Christian would say. Your intelligence, as metaphysics will tell you. And as an intelligence being, it implies that you are a celestial being. And that is why Paul will then go ahead to point out to you that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, that you are made in the likeness of your maker, as Genesis tells us. Made in the likeness of your maker. If your maker is infinite, then he has no body. He is not body. He is not in time. And therefore, in his infinite realm, there is no such a thing as spatio-temporal, space and time. They are absolute. They are nullified by the infinitude of the infinite universal intelligence. But if that is the case, how does he operate when he wants to reach any aspect of his infinite being? Metaphysics will tell you, and I have a book I've written about that, and we shall review that book, and you will come to understand that in the realm of the infinite universal intelligence, there is no space and time, but everything is what I regard or refer as the infinite instantaneous now. And what I mean by that is that the infinite universal intelligence of the eternal absolute being is conscious of himself at every infinitesimal point of his infinite nature. And therefore he does not need to move from one point to another to understand anything. That is the only way that we can be able to remove the problem of space and time in the aspect of infinity. And because you are made in the likeness of this intelligence, just similar to a drop of water from this ocean, if we remove the drop of water from this ocean and measure its contents, we will come to find with the precision of a master that the drop of water has everything in the same ratio with the infinite ocean. And what I mean by that is that if the content of, say, salt in this ocean is 5%, the content of the salt within the drop of water from the ocean will equally be 5%. If the water has anything, any of the ingredients that forms this water, the drop of water will have the same. So the quality is the same between a drop of water from this ocean and the infinite ocean itself. The only difference is in the quantity. That whereas the ocean is infinitely huge, the drop of water is a minute, finite portion of that infinite sea. But when we, or if we dropped the drop of water back into the ocean, that drop of water becomes a part of the infinite ocean. You cannot go back to where you dropped it and say the drop of water is here because this is where I dropped it. No. The drop of water becomes a part of the infinite ocean. And in equal measure, because we are made with intelligence, and that intelligence is infinite, then we are part of that infinite intelligence. But when the difference comes when we deviate or divert our consciousness from hidden ideas of the internal, the ideas of the infinite universal intelligence, to hidden ideas of the external, which is the ideas of the members of the body constituting of the body of death, as Paul calls it, that has a different law from that law of our mind, and that wages war against the law of our mind. In that instance, we are disconnected from the infinite universal intelligence of the eternal absolute being. And that is the constitution of our fall from the metaphorical Garden of Eden. For Garden of Eden is a metaphor, is not a locality. It is heaven, and heaven itself is not a locality, but it's a dimension of consciousness, which constitutes of the highest dimension of consciousness. And when I talk of the highest dimension of consciousness, as I stated earlier, I'm talking of infinities, in qualities, characteristics, and attributes of its maker, of its origin. And therefore, when we refocus our mind back to the infinite universal intelligence, as I said in one of my last videos, we take our rightful possession. That is when we become a high priest at the altar that is set at the center of the temple in the infinite kingdom of the infinite universal intelligence of the eternal absolute being. And what that implies is something that I will discuss in my next video. So watch out for my next video. In the meantime, continue to like this channel, continue to subscribe, continue to share this channel with family and friends, that they may also benefit from the insights of Joe Mwai. But in the meantime, I will say adios, amigo.